Welcome, everyone, to the Unfiltered Podcast. Lee Stevenson here, overseer of church planting for Converge, local church planter in Orlando, Florida.
I'm Danny Parmalee and oversee church planting for Converge Mid-America.
And we want to kind of address those that are kind of on the fence as to, is God calling you to plant a church or not? And just maybe you're at a place kind of going, I think God is calling me to. It's, what do I do now? How do I get moving in the process? And Danny, this is something that you deal with on a daily basis, I'm assuming, just being in a district role, a regional role, a lot of interaction, a lot of feedback, a lot of people filling out information on websites. And it's kind of, so what advice would you give to somebody who goes like, I think God's calling me to plant a church. Now what do I do? Like, where do I actually get started?
Yeah. And this is actually my most fun part of the job, actually, is working with guys in this phase. A lot of times people think that my job is recruitment, and sometimes I even describe it that way, but it's really not. It's actually a job of discernment on the front end of things. And so, and what I mean by that is I don't believe that every single person is called to be a lead church planter. And so a lot of that is with guys that are kind of, thinking about it is, of course, yes, it's going to God in prayer. But I think the second part of it is submitting yourself to wise counsel, to people, to a process that helps you to discover, first of all, if you are called and gifted to be a church planter. So within church planting, I think that there is a unique personality and spiritual gift mix that some of it we see in scripture, and some of it's been stuff that we've just kind of learned over the years. And so for guys that are kind of like kicking that around, I would say that the pre-assessment, or you've heard of assessment center or assessment process, is just so huge in that. So before you say, yes, I'm planting a church type of thing, like I had a dream or someone told me I should plant a church, God may be using some of those things as the initial promptings. Maybe someone saw you preach, or they've seen you in ministry. Your pastor, mentor said, "Hey, consider church planting." Take that as one piece of the puzzle, but then get involved in a process. So I'm going to speak specifically to how Converge does it. So we really do what we call kind of a pre-assessment process, where there's kind of asking some questions. There are some different personality profile kind of assessments that we have people take. Those are often helpful to kind of just, see if, you kind of fit at least some of those main things. Again, conversation, what other people have witnessed, what you've done kind of in your life. And then it comes to a place of formal assessment. So we have our assessment centers that happen all over the United States. We're going to have one coming up in June in Nashville, where I am very excited about that one. So some of you that may be listening to this are like, hey, I want to get into that process, then reach out to myself. And again, it doesn't matter where you're going to plant. You can plant anywhere in the United States. That's really national that we do that. And that's a 4-day process that will give kind of a deep dive into that. So as far as starting the process, there's this pre-assessment assessment process. The other thing that I would say to it is that you want to find your tribe. Who are the people that you want? Now, we Lee and I, we're very biased towards Converge, but we're the first ones to admit that Converge may not actually be the tribe that you should plant with. We'd love to have that conversation with you. We'll tell you how we operate. We'll tell you our theological and philosophical ways in which we do, planting, but that may be a great fit for you. If not, we will help you. So again, we're not trying to recruit you. We want to help point you in the right direction. There's some great church planting organizations that will, probably even do a lot of similar stuff that we do as far as pre-assessment and assessment, type of thing that way.
So let me begin with that, Danny, because you already covered a lot of information.
Yeah.
When it comes to choosing a tribe, what are a couple key questions that you think a person needs to ask as they're journeying through this idea? And I know the one question that we tend to ask is who gives the most money.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going to go. But I think there are there are a lot of questions that are much more important than just money.
Yeah. I do like to think of it a little bit like dating, which I know sounds weird. And I actually think it is okay for a church planter to, as much as they're in a pre-assessment process. You should also be kind of just judging some of the chemistry in the field there. So it's hard. There's not a specific question, but you should ask their philosophy of planting. They might say, hey, our philosophy of planting is, we only do house churches, or we only fund churches once they get over 500. And maybe some of those things, just all of a sudden you're like, oh, you know what? That's not what how I want to plant my church, or that's not how I'm wired. But more of it is the chemistry stuff. So whether it's on phone calls, whether you're going to their events, that's really helpful. When you look around the room, are you excited to be there? Are you looking around saying, this is the group of people that
They're
I
like
want to
me.
celebrate? Yeah, that are like me, that I'm going to want to celebrate with. That this is the group of people that when I'm having a tough time, that I'm going to feel totally comfortable giving them a ring. And again, there's probably no specific questions to kind of ask, but just I think even kind of how you're treated. And it's been fun for me because there's certain guys where it's like, man, talking to them, I'm like, I don't think you're fit for Converge, but I want to introduce you to my friend who leads this church planting organization. You're a perfect fit for them, type of thing that way. Um so yeah, the pre-assessment, like asking that question and truly giving it, before the Lord. The thing that I would kind of encourage guys is your knowledge of church planting is not as important. So there's a lot of guys who don't want to take the step of even like calling me or calling someone else because like I need to learn more about church planting before I ever call. Absolutely not. I have conversations with guys. They barely know what church planting is. Someone just said, "Hey, you should consider church planting." They're like, "I have no idea what that is," and they can become the most amazing church planners. And starting out with no knowledge of church planting is one of the things that's easier to train. So for us, it's discerning the call of it, some of your passions, gift mix, more than the actual practical logistical things that it takes to plant a church.
Yeah, well said. And I would even tack onto it is thinking through like you want to ask some of the systematic questions. Like walk me through the process
Yeah,
of where do I go from here? What are the key markers that you're looking for? And if they don't have an answer to some of those things and they can't
yeah,
quickly come up with it,
yeah,
you're going to be an afterthought in their process. And I would find a
yeah,
different tribe to align with.
yeah.
Um,
Let me add to that too, because you said something. Is ask the questions too that are beyond launch, because there are groups out there, and they would say this about themselves that they're a church launching organization. So it's like once you launch, that's really what their primary goal is, in comparison to other groups such as Converge, where it's like it's the long term relationship. We've got 150-year-old churches, and after you launch, there are still tons of resources for you, everything from loans and retirement funds, and what it looks like for you as you grow from a church plant into an established church and a multiplying church, and those types of things. So just understanding some of those different. So yes, asking the process questions. I think it is okay to ask about funding, just to kind of that's not your primary, that's not going to be your primary determining factor, but how will they fund you? Ask about coaching. What does it look like for someone to coach me through the process? So like I said before, there's guys that are like, hey, I have no idea how to actually plan a church. That doesn't matter. We can pair you with someone. It has more to do with, again, that the drive and gift mix and personality, for church planting. The other thing is I'll tell guys, you may discover that God's called you to church planting, but there's lots of steps in between. That's okay. We're in it for the long haul as well too. So we've talked before about residencies, or maybe you're like, hey, someone said church planting, but I'm a youth pastor now. I want to get some experience as I don't know, an associate pastor, a preaching pastor, or even a lead pastor, whatever. That's totally fine. We're in it for the long haul. Let's figure out maybe what some of those next steps are, because every person's timeline is different as well too.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. And I I'm particular about our coaching process as well. It's easy for organizations to stand out there and say, "Yeah, we'll pair you up with a coach," but I would go next level. Like, what qualifies them as a coach?
Mhm.
Is it just because they're available, or if they have the experience? Have they coached other people successfully? Is there a credentialing process? Just dive into a little bit because it's you are looking for a long-term relationship, and you ought to know the ins and outs of the organization that you're looking to planting with. But starts with a phone call, start with an email, and just see where it goes relationally from there. Would
Yeah.
be my advice.
One quick thing before we close up here is you had mentioned the coaching thing. One of the things that I do love about Converge is that our coaching and even our church planning process is not model specific. So in other words, you may go, "Well, I kind of want to plant a church, but it's different." We coach people to the church that God has laid on their heart and pair them with a coach that maybe even didn't plant a church in that sort of way, but the coaching model says, we're going to help you to plant the church that God's laid on your heart, not just a cookie cutter type of approach that says, okay, now ask them to do this or tell them to do this on week 14 of their, church plant. Of course, coaches are going to bring their own personal experience. They might have their own opinions, but their job is really to help you plant the church that God's laid on your heart.
Love it. Love it. Well, we'd love to be able to partner with you, walk that journey. And even if you didn't plant with Converge, we'd love to be a resource to you. Reach out to us and let us know how we can help you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, to the Unfiltered podcast. Until next time, keep it real.